Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. So glad you're here, and thank you for watching. I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you have any questions. Today's edition of Courtroom Insider is going to be a little bit different, but powerful, in my opinion. I just spoke with a man named Ashton Holbrook, who has a message of resilience, a message of hope, a message of what to do when horrible things happen to you, how to handle it, I guess you could say. And if this is a message for anybody that's gone through grief, that's lost a loved one, that has been wronged, that has dealt with the court system, and this is exactly what Ashton went through. I first got to know Ashton back in 2015. It was around Thanksgiving when his family, his wife and children, went to have lunch with him at Five Guys in Pocatello. And on their way home to Blackfoot, a semi coming the other way on I-15 lost a tire. The tire blew, and the semi careened across the median and slammed into the car carrying his family. His young daughter, Madeline, was 7 at the time, I believe, 6 or 7, and she died at the scene. His wife was flown to the hospital with multiple injuries and nearly lost her foot. And the other children in the car had minor injuries, but were fine. It was later learned that the truck was not safe and had been deemed unfit, basically, to be on the road. And the driver was charged, and it went through the court system, and it ended up, I think, getting pleaded down, and I don't remember all the details. We have it on East Idaho News, and I talk about it with Ashton here in a moment. But had that tire been legal for the road, the accident likely wouldn't have happened. The tire was not up to safety code, and so it was basically an illegal tire. And because of that, Ashton lost his daughter. And it's taken 10 years for him to decide to talk publicly about this. We've been in touch over the years, and he hasn't been ready to talk. The interesting thing about Ashton is he's a therapist. He's a mental health counselor who deals and has patients who come in and clients who have lost children, who have lost spouses, who have been through traumatic events. And the reason he reached out to me and said, "I'm ready to talk now," is he wants to reach out to parents around the world who lose loved ones and just offer himself as a resource, not for counseling, he'll do that, but not for pay, just to be there, just to go have lunch with him, just to say, "I've been there." He said somebody did that for him when he lost his daughter, and he wants to do it for others too. It's a powerful story that really shows that you can get through these hard times. Maybe is get through, or you can move forward, I guess, is a way. I don't know how you would describe it. Not get over it, because as he says, that never is the case. You don't get over it, but you move forward. So I'm going to quit talking. And now, as I said, I just spoke with Ashton in our studio. He came down here, so we're going to jump over to the studio for that interview. Here is Ashton Holbrook. My guest today is Ashton Holbrook, who we actually covered a horrible incident, a tragedy that happened with his family 10 years ago. We were just talking before we started to roll around Thanksgiving time, so almost 10 years ago.
Yep.
Ashton, for those people that aren't familiar with the story, could you just kind of give us a brief recap as to what happened?
Sure, yeah. It was 2015. It was just before Thanksgiving, about 2 days before Thanksgiving. My wife and kids had come down to visit me in Pocatello at work. I was busy with school and internship and stuff at the time, and so I didn't have a lot of time to spend with the kids. So they thought they were on break, so they thought coming down for lunch would be nice. And young kids. Yeah, young. Yeah, my daughter that was killed, Madeline, she was only 7.5, and my youngest was a year old, and then 2 other kids in between. And then when they were driving back after lunch and some shopping for some last minute things for Thanksgiving, a semi-truck heading southbound, my wife was heading northbound, semi-truck heading southbound blew a tire on his front wheel, and he lost control, crossed the center median, and that's when the collision happened. And Madeline was killed instantly. She was sitting in the front seat, and my wife was pretty banged up. Her foot was pretty much ripped off, just kind of hanging by tissue and tendons. Mm. And then the 3 kids in the back, miraculously, they were okay. They were hurt, but they weren't. The injuries weren't as severe. So I was at work at the time, and I get a phone call from a bystander at the scene saying, "Hey, you need to get down here. Your wife's been involved in an accident." And so I left work right away, and by the time I got to the freeway, traffic had already backed up to Pocatello.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and so I was like driving down the shoulder to get to him, and it was really frustrating some of the time because people would like cut me off.
Right.
"Hey, you can't do that," right?
Yeah.
So I'd get out and I'd yell at him, "Hey, my family's up there in the accident." And by the time I got there, Life Flight, I think, was just landing. I'm trying to find my kids. It's really chaotic, right? The 3 of them were in a van, and some bystanders were watching them. 2 of them were in the van. Excuse me. My youngest, Elijah, he had gotten some cuts on his head from glass, but there was a lot of blood, and so they thought something more serious was happening. So he was already in an ambulance.
And he was 1?
Yeah, he was 1 at the time. Yeah, and he was already in an ambulance at that point, and so I remember they're telling me this, and that's when it hit me. I'm like, okay, where's Madeline? Where's my daughter at? And everyone just kind of looked at me. No one would answer me, and so that's when I turned around and started heading up to the crash site, and ISP officer pulled me aside and had told me what had happened at that point.
And that's when he told you she had passed.
Yeah, and that was a pretty intense moment. I remember screaming. I remember dropping to the ground. I remember him, kind of patting my back, rubbing my back. And then I don't know how long passed of me sitting there, and I remember having the thought, I need to turn this off. I got a wife I got to take care of. I got kids I got to take care of. And I just shut it down, stood up, and I said, okay, what's next? What do I need to do?
Really?
Yeah.
You were able to just...
Well, I disassociated.
Put it out of your mind, right?
Yeah.
Mind leaves your body or whatever.
Yeah. I just shoved that emotion down and everything, and I just kind of went into survival mode. And, okay, what do we have to do? What's the next thing? They were getting Elena out of the truck at that point. I went in the ambulance with my youngest, and the other 2 were brought up by ambulance as well, but they were in the same ambulance. So that was a tough decision. Like, who do I go with? Right?
And who would have ever thought you'd have that decision
right,
to make?
Yeah. And then we get up to the hospital, and
were they all taken to the same hospital?
Yeah, they're all Portneuf.
Portneuf, okay.
Yeah, Portneuf, and I remember getting there, and that's when I first saw Elena and my wife, and that's when I saw the damage and everything, and it was pretty hard, and she was pretty upset, obviously, and the kids were all being looked at by various doctors and stuff, and I remember feeling really scared, really alone, right? We don't have Elena's family, my wife's family's in Utah, my family's in Arizona, and so we didn't have anybody, close by.
Yeah.
And about, 10 minutes after we got to the hospital, a bunch of my coworkers showed up that I was working with at the time, and I've expressed to them my gratitude, but I don't think they fully understand how much that actually meant.
Right.
Showing up and being there to support me. And so then from there, everything just kind of went as it needed to go. My wife had 6 surgeries, I think, in the first 8 days on her foot. And then my son, he had some glass, that had hit his head, and it just turned out to be a couple scratches.
Oh,
like
good.
It was way. In fact, I kind of can actually remember the doctor laughing a little bit because as he was like, very delicately like trying to clean the wounds, and then he realized how minor they were and he just starts scrubbing.
And then the other two kids were fine?
Yeah, the other two kids were fine, other than just being, shaken up.
It's horrible that this happens any time of year, but 2 days before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it definitely compounded things. And it makes Thanksgiving a difficult time for us, in our family. Not that it's always a time of sorrow, but, it's a painful reminder of what happened.
Right. So having a mental health background, which I guess we haven't said yet, tell people you're a counselor, you're a therapist.
Yes, I am.
Give us a little bit about your background and what led you into that field, and did that help cope with this?
Oh yeah, wow. I decided to get into mental health back in 2010, 2009, right around there. We were living in California at the time. We lost our house. I lost my job because of the housing crisis that happened at that time. And so it was like, okay, time to go back to school. And that's what I originally had gone to school for, was starting to get into mental health. So I just kind of went back into that. And when the accident happened, I had already had my bachelor's and was already working for the Department of Health and Welfare on what was called the ACT team, assertive community treatment. So I was working with people who already had, mental health challenges. I was with them day in, day out, going to appointments with them, doing groups with them. I was also working on mental health court at the time with clients. And so I was having a lot of exposure to kind of what daily life with mental health looks like. Mm-hmm. And then obviously I was in school when the accident happened, and so I was learning about all these things. Did it help? I suppose in some ways it did, but there's nothing like experience to give you experience, right? Like I had to live with the grief of losing my daughter every day. My wife had to live with that. Our kids have to live with that. And that's been the biggest teacher of what it means to live with trials, what it means to live with a burden, And we can talk theory and, what you do for someone in counseling, how you work grief, what the techniques are and the strategies. But at the end of the day, it's just, you have to make a choice to keep moving. You have to make a choice to keep stepping forward, to keep showing up despite how you feel. Yeah.
So what happened legally with the crash? I mean, was it ruled an accident?
Mr. Ledger, he was the driver. He was hauling scrap metal. He had a scrap metal business in Pocatello. He was sentenced, I believe it was pled down from manslaughter to failure to maintain his vehicle.
Because the tire was not a legal tire. It hadn't been maintained.
Yeah. Well, the truck in general was in pretty poor. We had a private investigator look at it, and in general it was in pretty poor repair. But he was sentenced, I think, to a year of probation, if I remember right. I never saw him again after the hearing.
You testified though, didn't you?
I gave a
victim impact statement.
Victim impact statement, yeah. And before I did that, I gave him a picture of my daughter, and I said some things to him when I gave him the picture. And I think this is one of the interesting things about grief. People on the outside see a very different experience than the person who's experiencing the grief, right, and the loss. After I had people coming up to me or commenting, "Oh, that was so nice of you to give him that reminder of your daughter," or, he's trying to make amends, he's trying to forgive that person. I didn't forgive him. I wanted him to feel the pain I was feeling. I wanted him to feel some responsibility for what he had done. And that was why I gave that picture to him. And maybe some people might feel shame for saying something like that, but that's how I felt. Right. I wanted him to hurt. I wanted him to feel that,
Can you tell us what you said to him? If
I don't,
you don't
I
have
don't,
to.
I don't remember exactly what
Yeah.
it was, but it was something along the lines of, hey, I hope you remember, when you look at this picture, I hope you remember the life you've taken and what that's done to me and my family. Something along those lines.
And what was his response?
He didn't say anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And like I say, I don't know what happened to his probation term. I don't know if he successfully completed it or not. I know his business isn't there anymore, and that's the extent of it. We never got an apology. We never were told sorry, anything like that. So, but that doesn't matter at this point.
Right.
I mean, it's.
I would imagine though, if it's just an accident, if it's just a freak accident, I don't know if that's easier to deal with than when you find out the truck wasn't maintained, that had that tire been legally, up to code. Is it any different? Or at this point, are you kind of like, I can't dwell on that?
That's where I'm at this point. I can't dwell on that at this point. I don't want to dwell on that at this point. I had a lot of anger after the accident. It really shook me up in some ways. Because generally speaking, I'm a pretty stoic person. Like, I don't get riled up too much, right? But I struggled with feelings of anger towards him, feelings of anger towards the world. Like, I mean, why did this happen? Why me? Why this situation? If the tire would have been maintained, like all those things, like just racing through my head constantly. And I got counseling. I would go to a counselor, which is interesting. A counselor seeing a counselor.
Right.
That's an interesting dynamic.
Analyze how they were talking to you.
It creates some interesting conversations.
Yeah.
And then the anger would subside, and then it'd come back, and then it would subside, and it just was this cycle for several years of just like, how do I deal with this? And what made it difficult was also the work I was doing too, where it was like, here I am supposed to be calm and have things figured out, and for all these people that I'm working with, and yet inside I'm this, boiling pot about ready to explode. Right. I did some research. I did some research, and there's a therapeutic technique called EMDR. Stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's for people who've gone through trauma, and I decided to give that a try. And I did a few sessions of that, and that, I think, was the turning point for me in how I was handling that anger. Through that process, I basically figured out where my anger was coming from, and it came from the fact that I had failed as a father. A father's responsibility is to protect his children, and I didn't do that. It's not my fault that it happened, and I see that and I understand that, but I accepted responsibility for a role that I did not fulfill. And that might sound like splitting hairs a little bit, but to me it mattered, because that's a very important role for me, right? To protect my children, to protect my family. And I didn't do that. And once I came to a point of accepting that, the anger changed. And it wasn't something that was like controlling me or consuming me. It just was a part of me. And it became something that I could actually use to my advantage, because I think when we use anger in a positive way, it becomes determination, right? It becomes motivation. And that was a real turning point for me. It was probably about 3 years ago when that happened.
3 years, so it took about 7 years. So that's interesting to hear you say that, because I imagine most of our viewers would say, well, clearly it wasn't his fault. He wasn't there. He was at work. He just had lunch at Five Guys with the family, you know. How can he blame himself? But I think as men sometimes, or often, we think, I mean, I think about my kids, I'll do anything for them at any time.
Absolutely. And that's a belief we hold on to,
right?
And that's a value that defines our behavior and motivates our behavior and moves us a direction in life. And that's a great thing, right? There should be protectors of the family. There has to be in the world we live in. But because that's a belief that we hold, that means that we can accomplish that belief, but we could also fail at that belief. And we have to realize that both of those realities exist.
Was that pivotal for you?
Very much so. very much so. And it like I say, it changed that anger, and it allowed me to focus more on the motivation of things and the determination with things that I wanted to do in my life. And it actually opened up a lot of direction for me that I had previously been avoiding in my life. Like, I don't think I would have ever gone into practice for myself had I not had that moment, because it was life-changing in a way.
Which you're doing now. You have your own practice.
I have my own office now, yeah.
And how is this is a poor question, the mental health overview in Eastern Idaho right now? And when I say that, I mean, are there enough therapists?
No.
For people to get counselors?
No. I am booked out probably 8 weeks.
Wow.
I've got a wait list of maybe 20 people. And that's not unique to me. Most therapists are going to be in that situation.
What are the main things people are seeking treatment for? Anxiety,
depression. Yeah. I also work, specifically myself, I also work with a lot of people with trauma and grief. A lot of first responders, former military, things like that. So, but anxiety and depression are totally driving people right now.
Any theories as to why there's such high numbers versus maybe 20 years ago?
Sure.
Is it going to be social media?
Yeah, social media. Yeah, there's a great book. It's called The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about that is a lot of people talk about the anxiety and depression people are facing right now and say, well, it's COVID, right? It was all that isolation that everybody felt and experienced. But if you look at the data before COVID, things were already trending that way. COVID might have exacerbated things a little bit, but that trend of people having anxiety and struggling with depression was already moving that way as social media usage was increasing. So I do think that's what it is, because social media creates a false narrative in our lives, and it creates a comparative interaction with something that's really not real.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what people post on social media are what people want them to see,
right,
not what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. We only see the good stuff.
Right.
Or the stuff that makes us angry. And when you talk about anger, not in the good way that you're saying, in most cases.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess sometimes it can cause you to act and do something to change the world or change your world, but in most cases it's just meant to inflame.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I've told this to many of my clients. In fact, I was on a podcast a couple of years ago talking about this. The secret to happiness, if we want to call it that, is bringing expectation in line with reality. When our expectations don't line up with what reality is, that gap, it fills with anxiety, anger, grief, resentment, frustration, and that's all the things that lead to anxiety and depression. Anxiety is worry about the future, right? Because of the stories we've told ourselves from the past. And depression is worry about the past because of the stories that we've told ourselves what that means. And so if we want to experience more happiness or satisfaction in our life, we need to bring expectation in line with reality, because we can't change reality. Like, good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. Yeah. Accidents happen and children die, and parents have to bury their children. Children are molested by parents. First responders respond to horrific accidents. I mean, we don't have to look far to see that the world is not a safe place. We're not going to change that. And if we have this expectation that somehow the world's going to adapt to us, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment, anger, frustration. So we have to change ourselves. We have to focus on what we can do.
How do you reach out to men? I think a lot of guys think about therapy. Oh, I don't need that, and I'm tough, and I'm fine. And yet we often see men doing these horrible crimes and shootings, and clearly there's mental issues there. I mean, what's the disconnect? Why are a lot of guys so nervous about getting therapy? And are you seeing more men that come in for help?
I would say probably about a third of my clients right now are men. It definitely is a more a bigger challenge getting men into therapy, because when men come into therapy, the men that I work with, when they come into therapy, there is this wall there of distrust. There is this wall there of like, okay, that I have to figure out how to get over with them to get them to open up, right? Why that happens, I mean, I think there's the obvious reasons, right? Like, what does society tell us about the role that men have? Men are allowed to feel two emotions, anger or more anger, right? Those are the acceptable emotions. But yet, men between the ages of 18 and 35 are at the highest risk of suicide, right? They're at the highest risk of completing. So there's something to be said about this idea that if I don't talk about how I'm feeling, or at least acknowledge how I'm feeling, at some point I'm going to pop. At some point I'm going to, explode. Yeah. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I focus on with the men that I do work with, is helping them, number one, identify their emotions, because most of the time they don't know what it is they're feeling, and then expressing it. And expressing it doesn't mean breaking down and crying and, turning into this blubbering mess, as one person said to me, but it just means being able to express it effectively. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean you have to act that way. Yeah. And so much in our society, we think, well, if I'm mad, that means I have to act mad. If I'm angry, that means I have to act angry. If I'm sad, that means I have to act sad. And it's a much more dialectic approach where you can feel sad, but still show up for work. You can feel angry and still communicate with somebody effectively. And that's the skill I try to focus on with people, is holding on to those two things at the same time and still doing something effective with it.
Yeah. One of the reasons you wanted to do this interview was to reach out to parents who lose their children, and which is something you've kind of quietly been doing behind the scenes.
Yeah. I obviously with the East Idaho News website, you guys post the obituaries and stories of people, and I see these parents who've lost children, and my heart breaks for them. It's I know what that's like. It's not normal for a parent to have to bury a child. It's supposed to be the other way around. And so I have in the past kind of innocently figured out who they were through Facebook, right? You know, and East Idaho is a very small place, so if I can't find them that way, I know somebody.
There's ways.
Yeah. And I'll send them a message. I'll send them a text. I'll send them a Facebook Messenger, and I just let them know that they're not alone. I let them know that other people have experienced loss like this, and that if they want to talk, I'm there. I'll give them my phone number. I'll give them my address. Sometimes I've gotten responses. Sometimes I haven't. But for me, like when I think back to when I lost Maddie, someone did that for me. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, do you need to talk? We went to lunch and we talked about it.
Someone who had lost a child.
Yeah, someone had lost a child. And it's a club that nobody wants to be a part of, but knowing that someone else had been through that was tremendously helpful for me. Grief is a funny thing. Like typically when we approach somebody who's grieving, we tell them how we feel, right? We don't try to understand how they're feeling. And to the person who's grieving, that's a very invalidating and sometimes very frustrating thing. I don't care how you feel, right? I'm the one who's lost something. I want to talk about the person that I've lost. Now, I recognize for those people are trying to do the best they can. They're trying to help. I mean, it's not coming from a place of malice, but when you're talking to somebody who's been there, when you're talking to somebody who's been through it, it changes the conversation. And you can sit with them and talk about the things that they enjoyed about their loved one, talk about the things that they regret, talk about the things that they would have liked to have had happen that didn't happen. And
that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people.
It can.
Like a lot of times people say, I just don't know what to say, so I'll ignore it. Or I'll ignore them. I know even in myself, I'll see someone and I'm like, oh, I know they went through, maybe not a death, but even a divorce or something. So how do you approach those situations? If I see you in a grocery store and I know you've lost your child a week or so ago, what should I say?
It's going to be different for everybody, right? I think that talking to them, how do I word this? Like, not as if anything didn't happen, but they're still that same person. They're still that friend that you've had. They're still that coworker that you've had. They're still that person that you know. Yes, this horrible thing has happened to them, but they want to connect with you still the way that they've connected with you. And the connection doesn't necessarily have to be about this loss. Talk to them like you would normally talk to them. Ask them what they thought of the game Sunday night. Ask them what they're doing, what their plans are for next week. Engage them in conversation that's not, because your discomfort's going to show to them. They're going to be it's going to be obvious to them, right? So you just treat them the way you've always treated them.
Yeah.
It's not, the death, the loss doesn't make them any different in that sense. Yes, it makes them very different, obviously, but they're still the person that you love, you care about,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way you need to connect with them. I think also people who are grieving, they want to talk about the person that they've lost. And I think if you give them that opportunity, that is a great way to help them, to let them experience that grief in a positive way. They want to talk about who they were. They want to talk about what they did that was funny. They want to talk about the memories that they have of them, because for the person who's grieving, that's how they're keeping that person alive. That's how they're keeping that person in their life still, is by those memories.
Right.
And that's a great way to help them as well.
That's what Dylan Round's mom told me. The same thing. I said, what should people say to you? She goes, ask me about Dylan.
Yeah.
Ask me how I'm doing and ask me about Dylan.
Yeah.
Because then don't say I know how you feel.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had that. But again, I think people don't do it out of malice.
No.
But it is more like I know how you feel, or I can't imagine going what you're going through. Go up and say, how are you doing, and tell me about Dylan.
Yeah. Some of the most frustrating experiences I had right after the accident were people telling me, because I'd talk about how angry I was, or don't let that anger consume you, and yeah, they're right in the long run, but in that moment, I don't want to hear that. I want to be able to express that. I want to be able to talk about that. And a lot of times, as we try to validate others, we actually are shutting them down.
How did you help your wife and kids? I imagine your wife felt guilt.
Oh, it's been a long road for Elena. It really has. I think in some ways, I don't want to speak for her, but I think in some ways she still struggles with it, but who wouldn't? I still struggle with it, right? I mean, it's part of our lives. But, as far as how have I helped her, I think the biggest thing that this experience has done for her and I is pull us together as a couple. This weekend we celebrate 23 years married.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah. And I think about our relationship and everything we've been through, the trials that we've faced, the good times, the bad times. I wouldn't want anyone else next to me through any of this. She has been amazing, and she's truly helped me become the person I am, and I would hope that I've helped her become the person that she is. But a lot of patience, a lot of love, and a lot of support for each other and listening. I think something like this, losing a child, just magnifies what you already have in a relationship. And if that relationship was already stressed and strained, it's going to get even worse. And if that relationship had some good things to build on, it's going to move forward that way. Mm-hmm. Statistically, we should have gotten divorced, right? The research says when a couple loses a child, that's the most likely outcome.
Yeah.
But her and I have approached this the way we've approached everything in our marriage, and that's together, and not trying to isolate one another. I've never blamed her, and I wouldn't blame her, and it's not her fault. Right. And same with my kids, right? They were very young, and so their memories of Maddie are probably a little more dim, but we talk about her often, and she's still very much a part of our family. Yeah. We've got a little cabinet at home with a bunch of her stuff still in it.
Yeah.
So, and it's our life now, right? And we can't make it go back to the way it was. So the only way is forward.
And how would you say you're doing? I mean, could you have done this interview 5 years ago?
No.
I know, because I've asked. Maybe I did not. Maybe 10 years ago. I know,
sure.
but
yeah.
What got a decade is It's crazy.
It is crazy, and it sounds cliche, but I do think time is the best medicine for grief. Time is going to make things better, and we have to be patient with ourselves when we're going through grief. We have to be patient with ourselves when we're going through any trial, right? Anyone who's listening to us, you have survived 100% of your bad days. You've got a good track record that you're going to continue to survive your bad days. And I think we lose track of that sometimes. We lose sight of that, I've gotten through horrible things. I can get through horrible things. This doesn't have to be the end, and this doesn't have to define the way my life moves forward. Yeah.
Well, how do people get a hold of you? As you mentioned, you want to help the parents.
Yeah. These parents, we kind of sidetracked from that, but these parents that I contact, I don't necessarily contact them in the capacity of a therapist. Right. I'm happy to provide therapy to them. If they don't have a means to pay, I will see them pro bono, and I have in some cases. If they have insurance, great, we'll use that. But if you are a parent that has lost a child and you need someone to talk to, I can be contacted on my Psychology Today profile. Just search my name, my contact information comes up. My email address is emotionalflexibility@gmail.com. And I'm happy to respond to those messages and talk with people. People who've lost a child need to know they're not alone, and that there's someone there who can listen to them.
And I imagine that invitation is for people everywhere.
Yes.
No matter where they're watching. If you're watching in,
Yeah.
Italy or which we have sometimes a worldwide audience, there could be people that still want to talk to you.
In therapy, we're kind of taught we got to be careful with boundaries, right, and self-disclosure and stuff. But I struggle with that because I think that when someone knows what someone's been through, it helps increase that trust and makes therapy more genuine. Not that I offer anything different or miraculous that another therapist wouldn't do, but knowing when someone knows that what you've been through, it just helps. It drops that wall that we're talking about, right? And it makes it a little easier to talk about uncomfortable things.
Right, and you can see that, wow, you made it through. It took you 10 years, and here you are today, and you're helping other people. I can get there. I think for a lot of people, just to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I had a client some time ago that I worked with. It was a first responder, and he had seen some really horrible things. And at first he was really standoffish, right? But as soon as he had heard what I had gone through, it dropped that wall.
Right.
And it created that connection that he needed to help him move forward.
That's great. Well, you can search for Ashton Holbrook, HOLBROOK, ASHTON, and if you want to reach out to him. Is there anything that you want to add, Ashton?
Mental health is okay. If you're struggling, it's okay to talk about it. You don't need to go through these things alone. There's a lot of people out there that can help, and that's okay.
Yeah, great message. Thank you very much. I really appreciate Ashton coming in and sharing his story, and know that there are many around the world that can be touched by it. Here is where you can find him. You mentioned the Psychology Today. Here's that site, and then his email address too. You can reach out to him if you want to contact him, and if, of course, he's taking clients. You might be on a waiting list, as he mentioned, but you can also reach out if you are in the similar situation that he was, wherein he lost his daughter. He's there to cope and knows what it's like to go through an experience like that. So again, big thanks to Ashton. Big thanks to you for watching, and big thanks to newspapers.com, our sponsor. They have all sorts of interesting tidbits on there. You can go and research whatever you want. If you've never heard of newspapers.com, you should sign up for the 7-day trial. Go on and explore. Start by typing in your own name. I tried that with me. I couldn't find very many things on me. I haven't been in the newspaper a lot, but my colleague who used to write for some newspapers, we found him. He had a lot of his old bylines, stories that he wrote 10, 15, 20 years ago. And he said it was a walk down memory lane going through and seeing all those stories. So there's a lot of other interesting stuff on there that you can find. Newspapers.com. They sponsor Courtroom Insider. Again, you can get a 7-day free trial if you go check it out. Let us know what you think. And if you have any good stories that I can share here on Courtroom Insider about what you found on newspapers.com, please reach out to me. Here's how you can do that. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube here at East Idaho News. That's our channel. If you haven't subscribed, would love for you to subscribe because we have more interesting and exciting programming coming up this month. And we're about to start our Secret Santa surprises, which if you've never tuned in for those, hope you'll watch. I won't say much more. That's going to be coming, and we post them all on our YouTube channel. So would love if you're there to go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss a program. My thanks again to you for watching. We will be back soon with another Courtroom Insider. Take care, everybody.